Hi, Movie Patrol here. Today, I will be showing a drama film from 2021, The White Tiger. There are spoilers ahead. So watch out and enjoy. The movie takes place in the village of Laxmangar. They lack proper water system and electricity. Balram is the main character of the movie, born to a lower-class family. One day, an inspector visits Balram's school. He tests the kids to read the English text on the board. None of the kids can read English. Balram gets up and starts reading the sentences. The officer is surprised. He calls the boy up and asks what is born once every generation. Balram says the white tiger. The officer says he is the white tiger and that he will get a scholarship to study at Delhi. Balram is back at home with his brother and sees the landlord of the village, Stork, who came to collect his money. He was entitled to a third of everything the people earned. The eldest son Mukesh sees that Balram's dad has no money to pay. Balram learns how poor his family is at a young age. Despite Balram's academic potential, he has to quit school to work with his brother as a carpenter to support his family. Suddenly Balram's dad becomes sick from cancer and passes away. The family burns Balram's father's body. He sees this and passes out. A few years passed, and Balram is older now. Times have passed, but the Stork family was still collecting money from the village. Stork's youngest son, Ashok, studied in the US and recently came back home. Balram sees Ashok and decides to serve him as a master. Balram is begging his grandmother to lend him money so he can learn how to drive. He wants to become Ashok's driver. Balram promises to send money back when he gets hired. He leaves the village to take the driving lesson. After learning how to drive, Balram visits the Stork family without any notice. Balram asks to get hired, but the guard says they already have a driver and tells him to leave. However, Balram sees Ashok and pleads him to hire him. The Stork decides to hire Balram as Ashok needed a driver. The next day, Balram finds out the Stork family had learned everything about Balram down to his family. He says master must know everything about their servant because if the servant steals from the master, both the servant and the family had to pay for the price. Balram receives uniform from Ram, the number one driver of the family. The guard gives Balram carpet to do chores. Balram says he is a driver and it's not his job. The guard says he is the number two driver. Balram sees number one driver play badminton while he cleans carpet. Balram constantly looks for an opportunity to take the number one spot and keeps an eye on Ram. Ashok brings Balram into the room. Balram sees Ashok's wife, Pinky, for the first time. They have a talk and Ashok asks Balram if he knows what computer is, but Balram has no idea. Ashok sees Balram and sees opportunity in the untouched market of India. That night he goes to cyber cafe to learn what a computer is. Balram's brother visits Balram to collect the money he promised. That night, Balram sees Ram cooking in the dark. Next morning, Balram decides to follow him. Turns out Ram was Muslim. It was Ramadan, so he couldn't eat during the day. Ram kept it a secret from the master because he knew they hated Muslims. One night, Balram sees Ram getting paid extra to drive Ashok's family to Delhi for a business trip. On the day of the trip, Balram is cleaning the car Ram usually drives and says he will be the driver for this trip. Ram tries to stop him, but Balram threatens him with his secret. Ram leaves and Balram becomes the number one driver of the family. They leave for the trip. Balram sees hotel for the first time. Next day, Ashok's family is going around political parties to bribe their way into tax exemption for their coal mining business. They get shut down and sent back. On the way back, Balram is not used to driving in the city and gets scolded. Ashok understands Balram and encourages him instead. Mukesh goes back home and Balram is left alone with Ashok. As Balram spent more time with Ashok, he became more attracted to Ashok's kindness as a master. Balram learns more about Ashok and he swears to serve him with loyalty. After the trip, Balram is driving Ashok and his wife to Ashok's uncle's villa near Balram's village. Balram visits his family after dropping them off. He is eating with his family and Balram becomes angry when the family starts cursing at Ashok's family. He leaves. Balram is serving tea and Pinky notices that Balram's hand is in his crotch. She is disgusted and tells Balram that he needs to learn proper etiquette. Balram doesn't understand her. Pinky has a serious talk with Balram. She wants Balram to be a respectable person. She tells him that he must take care of himself. He sees toothbrush for the first time and starts brushing his teeth. He starts to question why he was never taught by his father to brush his teeth and that it was wrong to touch his crotch in front of people. It's Pinky's birthday. Balram surprises her with his new outfit. Later that night, they are at a club while Balram waits outside. Balram is driving Ashok and his wife back home. They are drunk in the back and Balram watches them through the mirror. Pinky says she wants to drive and switches seats with Balram. Pinky is driving recklessly and doesn't pay attention to the road. Suddenly, they hit a girl who came out of nowhere. They leave the car to check, but Balram stops Ashok. Balram says he will take care of everything and that they should leave. On their way back, Pinky is crying in regret. Balram washes the blood on the car. He tells him he did the right thing to serve his master even in the toughest moment. Ashok's family calls Balram to have a meeting. Ashok's family is nice to Balram for the first time. They make Balram read a statement that proves he was driving the car when the accident happened. Balram looks at Ashok and chooses loyalty. He signs the paper. Balram is in deep thought. Time passes and to Balram's surprise, no one was reported for murder. Balram is mistreated by Ashok's family again. Pinky is fed up with Ashok's family's actions and tells them that she is leaving. Pinky visits Balram at night to ask him to drive her to the airport. Pinky leaves him an envelope of money. Balram is back and Ashok finds out Balram drove Pinky behind his back. Ashok pushes Balram and starts becoming violent. Balram can't take it anymore and pushes Ashok away. Ashok mistreats Balram, but Balram stays to take care of him because it was his duty. Balram, knowing that Ashok is asleep, drinks alcohol with his feet on the table. Ashok and Balram spends more time together as they wait for Pinky to return. However, Ashok finds out Pinky won't be returning. Balram offers food to Ashok to cheer him up, but he says he is not hungry. He gets mad at Balram. Balram feels anger. That anger sparked something in Balram's heart. He thinks of a way to make money behind Ashok's back. He realizes that the money for gas is all paid by Ashok, and if he just drove people at night he will profit. Balram decides to drive Ashok's family's car at night to make money by becoming a taxi driver. Balram arrives and sees Ashok. He thinks that Ashok found out, but Ashok thinks that Balram was out at the temple praying for his health. Balram plays along. The next day, Balram is ordered to drive Ashok to the Parliament House. He sees the money in the red bag and calculates that it's worth at least 2 years of his salary. He can't stop looking at the bag. Balram starts to think of a way to steal the bag. It was raining that night and Balram had to pick Ashok from a hotel. Balram looks like he made up his mind. He stops on the side. He says something is wrong with the tire and tells him that he will go have a look. Balram tells Ashok that if he helps they can fix the tire faster. Ashok checks the tire. Balram approaches from the back with a broken glass and stabs Ashok in the back. Ashok is dead on the floor and Balram leaves immediately. He doesn't understand this kind of feeling. Balram decides to leave by taking the train. He sees another man with a blue bag in the train station. He flees to the city. After some time, Balram is seen visiting the police station to give a small offering of gratitude. The officer doesn't understand, but Balram says this is for all the things he will do for him in the future. Balram starts a taxi company called the White Tiger Driver. Balram says he doesn't know what happened to his family and that he can only wonder. He says he was able to free himself from his master because he made the decision to murder him. The movie ends with his servants watching his back as the cycle continues. Thanks for watching. If you want to watch more videos like this, subscribe and turn on the notification button.